Hello everyone, and thanks for hanging out with us for the Behind the Numbers Weekly Listen, an eMarketer podcast made possible by Newstar. This is the Friday show that reviews the most front page digital news stories of the week. I'm your host, Marcus Johnson. In today's show, what pandemic behaviors will stick around?
If it's something that has made a consumer's life easier during the pandemic, those are the things that are going to have staying power post-COVID.
Can newsletters replace local newspapers?
To get news from people you never heard of covering local news sort of defeats the whole purpose of Substack, because how am I going to build a following if nobody knows who I am?
YouTube's music streaming efforts.
Yes, YouTube has a huge hold on culture right now, but I actually think Spotify does as well. I think culturally, Spotify has kind of ingrained itself within the same group of people that YouTube is really popular with.
How to master the intimacy of the inbox. Amazon opens up a Salon. And the origins of the soundtrack. So, we are joined today by three wonderful folks. We are joined by our principal analyst who covers everything B2B. It's Gillian Ryan.
Hello.
Hello there. We're also joined by our analyst who covers retail. It's Blake Droche.
Hey, everyone.
Hello there, sir. And one of our analysts on the eMarketer Briefing newsletter team, it's Nina Getson.
Hi there.
Hello, folks. So, today's episode, as per usual, has four segments. We start with Story of the Week. We're going to be talking about different pandemic behaviors that we think will stick around. We then move to the Game of the Week, where we have four stories for you, different things that have happened recently, and we're going to try and get our three analysts to give you the best take possible to win the championship belt. And that's our Game of the Week. We then move to Questions Answered, which is the part of the show where we answer the questions that you've emailed into us, and then we finish with Dinner Party Data. We tell you about something interesting that we've just recently learned. We start with the Story of the Week. What pandemic behaviors will stick? Well, a recent article by Kevin Roos of the New York Times reads, "Welcome to the YOLO economy. Burned out and flush with savings, some workers are quitting stable, well-paid jobs in search of post-pandemic adventure. Others don't want to leave their jobs, but will if their companies force them to return to the office. It should be acknowledged that not everyone has the means to take this leap. However, Mr. Roos notes that a recent Microsoft survey found that over 40% of workers globally were considering leaving their jobs this year, and anonymous social network Blind, popular among tech workers, recently found that half of its users plan to get a new job this year. Some employers are offering incentives to try and combat this mass exodus. As Mr. Roos notes, LinkedIn recently gave the majority of its employees a paid week off. Yes, please. Twitter employees have been given an extra day off per month to recharge. Credit Suisse gave its junior bankers $20,000 in lifestyle allowances. I have some lifestyle upgrades I can make with that money. And the Wall Street firm Houlihan Lokey gave many of its employees all expenses paid vacations. But it's not just workers saying goodbye to their cushy jobs that they've fallen out of love with. Other pandemic-related behaviors are in the air. Some data from Earnest Research looking at spending patterns showed that spending on delivery services, travel, online groceries, home fitness, and athleisure was still, to this day, way up, with spending on casual dining, professional attire, gyms, department stores was still depressed. And Moloco, machine learning company and growth solutions firm, believe that dating and dining apps will be among the fastest to bounce back once COVID-19 related restrictions are lifted. Their recent mobile life after lockdown report looked at data and tried to predict the impact of lifted restrictions on mobile apps. So, it got me thinking, what does life after lockdown look like? And what behaviors do we expect to stick around? So I asked our three analysts before this recording if they could come up with one or two different behaviors that they thought were going to stick around. Who wants to kick us off?
So what you said about work and people quitting their jobs had me thinking about like the creator economy and these platforms that have seen so much growth over the pandemic. I'm thinking like Patreon, honestly, OnlyFans, even Substack, these platforms that essentially let you work for yourself. I think for something like Substack, where it came about because a lot of people in media lost their jobs, we're looking for different income streams. I still think it's here to stay, honestly. Just the fact that there's so much buzz around it. I don't have any specific data to back this up.
So, like you mentioned, there's already some platforms which are in existence, which have seen a lot of success as of late, and some existing platforms which, Jillian, I think LinkedIn just launched their creator or community or creator program, creator community program.
Yep. They're doing stuff on it. They're hiring ahead of community. And I think Nina's spot on, talking about like the future of work in general. And that was one of the trends that I was going to talk about, was just how the future of work will be different. And one of the trends that will stay is this kind of flexibility of work. And I think that's exactly what Nina's talking about. It's working for yourself, not working for the quote unquote man or quote unquote woman, but really having ownership in your own life, in your own professionalism, and trying to monetize yourself through these platforms. And that's something that's picked up. And I think depending on what industry you work in, is something that's going to continue to grow in a post-pandemic economy.
Mm-hmm.
Totally. You've seen this with the gig economy, and now you're seeing it for white collar workers. It's essentially just a continuation of that trend.
Mm-hmm. Do we think this is going to be a bit of a niche, or can we see large amounts of people moving over to these platforms? Is it going to be a full-blown trend, or something a couple of people do? Like before, we had some people used to work from home, like 5%, I think, it was one of the surveys, or a couple of the surveys I was looking at, 5% of people used to work from home. Pandemic hits, 60% of people working from home. Is it going to be a bit of a, what work from home used to be for folks, 5% of people doing this, or do we see it being 1 in 5 workers might start working from one of these different platforms?
Yeah, I think that's sort of like two different things that we're looking at. I mean, for those who remain in, corporate America, I think that there is still going to be a large section of the white collar workforce that will be returning to office. However, then there's this other side of of the conversation that we're having, which is those who are opting to leave a more traditional corporate environment, whether it be something that's full-time in the office or hybrid remote, and completely work for themselves. And that becomes how sustainable, like you're right, Marcus, how sustainable is that going to be for, a scale of people?
Yep.
And I think Blake is hitting on a really interesting theme that brings us into like the larger what pandemic behaviors will stick. I think there's a lot of intentionality that's going to happen once people are vaccinated and once it's safe to start engaging with society in the way that we used to do that. And I don't think people are going to be on autopilot anymore in terms of how they show up at work, in terms of how they spend their money, who they spend their time with, where they spend their time. They're going to want it to have more meaning. And so I think that impacts that kind of decision that we're talking about here, where it's like, do I want to continue to engage as a worker in white collar America? Or is there a route for me where I could have more flexibility, work for a more flexible company? And I think that'll also apply to things like, do I want to go to concerts? Is that going to pick up in a post-pandemic world? Do I want to continue online grocery shopping? It's all about just like being intentional with your choices. And I see that as kind of like the big consumer decision that's going to govern like the post-vaccination kind of re-emerging into society that each individual is going to have to go through.
Interesting. Do almost like a self-audit.
Yeah. I mean, I think about myself too as a newly vaccinated person, and like, what are the things that matter to me as a person, as a consumer? Before it was like, oh, I just want to go to restaurants, and it's like, do I still really want to do that? It's like the decisions that we once made before the pandemic, are those the same decisions that we want to make? I feel like I'm getting very philosophical here.
No, you're spot on though. I think businesses can't assume that folks are just going to come back. You almost have to reestablish that relationship, remind them of the reasons that they came back, and also improve upon the experience, and not just assume that things are going to fall back into the place for you.
And I think the experience, Marcus, too, is such a big part of it. Like the other thing that I had kind of identified at what will stick. And I think if it's something that has made a consumer's life easier during the pandemic, those are the things that are going to have staying power post-COVID. So what do I mean by that? Like if you think about an in-store shopping experience, you want to be able to do like contactless payments. You want to be able to have less friction in the shopping experience. So those things, once a consumer has experienced it, and once a business has invested the infrastructure and the money to develop that touch point, they're not just going to remove that. That's just going to be part of the new normal now. And other businesses that didn't, execute on those types of commerce points are going to have to step up, because that's now the baseline. That isn't just something that's innovative.
Yeah, it's great points, folks, on this. What other trends do we have? Any other behaviors we think are going to stick around?
Yeah, I was basically going to bring up Jillian's point, which I think it's a great point, is that anything that had just made the consumer's life easier that existed, but perhaps maybe there was a hurdle and the average person maybe didn't view this as a necessity. And it's something as simple as contactless payments, right? A lot of people are like, okay, well, I'm going to be pulling either a card or my phone out of my pocket. What's really the difference here? If maybe you're not super tech savvy, you're not going to take the 5 to 10 minutes or whatever to sync up your credit card with Apple Pay or Google Pay. But I think that's one of those things that once it's set up and ready to go, or once you already have an Instacart account, or once you've already bought a pair of jeans online that fit and you could buy it again without going to the store. These are the types of things that people were forced to experience, or I guess swayed to experience during the pandemic. And now that they're in place, they realize that, they can keep doing it out of convenience, really.
Right.
And even when the necessity fades.
Right. And we've got, before it was getting, cards and having touchless technology within cards. And now Amazon reportedly working on Amazon One that lets you pay with your palm. So palm recognition technology in store, stadiums and office buildings, because apparently pulling out your card to pay for something is just too much energy.
Yeah, I was going to say another small example of this is QR codes. I think we wrote a little while ago about how digital menus during the pandemic, you just scan a QR code. That's been way up because so many restaurants, it's a technology that's like maybe just annoying for a restaurant to adapt if they didn't need to. But a lot of people wanted to not have to touch a physical menu during the pandemic. It's just these tiny quality of life improvements, like being able to call a waiter from your phone and, they don't have to come up to you and say, what do you want? These small things, not just like how we interact digitally from our homes, but also how we interact with the world and like the post-pandemic world. I think the technology is totally going to change.
Yeah. Do you folks have any personal behaviors that you think is gonna stick? Less movie going, more click and collect, less restaurant dining, more working out at home? Anything personally for you which is going to change?
I gotta say it. I think this is something that I think that we will see, especially in urban areas, is that mask wearing will not go away. And regardless of what the technological implications of that are, just, from a personal experience, I was in Central Park over the weekend. I had to go into the public bathroom, and I was really glad that I had a mask when I had to go into the public bathroom because it smells disgusting and it just felt more secure. And, and you see it in other countries when people are sick and they have to get on the subway or use public transportation, they have the courtesy to put on a face covering. And I hope that some of that sort of courtesy and that just germ-conscious behavior persists, because I used to get sick, living in New York. You catch these colds and at least once or twice a winter, and being, more just conscious of like germs and stuff. It's been nice not to have a common cold, and, the flu was way down this year. So hopefully we can learn some of these lessons to just be just a little bit more hygienic.
In Blake's world, every kid wears a mask until at least 18.
Forever.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
So many germs.
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry, Jillian.
No, I was just going to say, I think, the CDC this week just put out that new guidance, basically saying that if you are vaccinated, it's now okay to, go outside without wearing a mask. And it's even with that guidance, I'm still within myself. Like I just went to the doctor today and I was like, I wore my mask on my walk there and back. I feel like it's become so habitual, but I do think that over the next month, we'll really start to see, if mask wearing will be here to stay in these kind of outdoor spaces. Like if that CDC guidance is kind of the declaration that people need to say, okay, I have to carry it with me if I'm on the subway, if I go into a smelly bathroom, if I'm on this, if I'm on the subway, whatever it may be, you might want to put it back on. But whether it's on all the time, I think, we'll see in the next month or so.
Yeah, I guess it is a reminder, especially for businesses, for marketers, that just because the CDC says something, just because people get vaccinated doesn't necessarily mean that everyone's going to feel good doing that thing, that they can all of a sudden say, all right, no more social distancing in our stores, no more hand sanitizer dotted around, no more mask wearing. There was something I was reading talking about the difference between getting vaccinated and then vaccine confidence. And I think that there is still going to be, unfortunately, a couple of months, maybe even years for some people to get the confidence. Because Gillian, to your point, it's been a year. We've been doing this thing for over a year now. Very interesting to see how long it takes for a behavior to really stick, especially one that has these kind of consequences if you don't act accordingly. Anyone else got any other behaviors that you think might stick?
I'm just going to say that New York Sports Club has been emailing me, for the last several weeks asking when I'm going to come back. And I'm not going back into a dirty gym, vaccinated or not. So I think my at-home morning yoga routine will be sticking for at least a few more months.
Interesting. What could they do? What could they say to you to get you back? What would be like, okay, I appreciate you saying that. I've got more confidence. I'm coming home.
Marcus, man. I don't know. I mean, gyms were dirty to begin with. And it's you just kind of went because there was no other option. And now I see that there are other options because I've been doing it for a year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Which goes back to, you can't just assume people are going to come back because they were there beforehand, especially places like gyms where people have that association with, people working out. Maybe they're not as clean as some places, whereas you may think, okay, restaurants, they clean it down every day. And so, yeah, it really is going to depend on the business, but you just can't assume folks are going to come on back when things calm down a little bit.
I don't think there's just going to be okay, everything's normal and it's just going to go back to exactly what it was. There's going to be a new normal, and it's going to take time as consumers figure out what they're comfortable with. Mm-hmm. And we might have consumers that are saying they're comfortable with something and then have an incident that happens and they kind of backtrack. There's going to be some ebb and flow over the next year or so.
Yeah, that seems to be one of the big realizations, is that it's not going to be snapping back. 2021, people thought, we'll get back to it. No, actually, it's going to be a year of transition, and maybe even 2022 and maybe 2023. And that's tough to hear, but it does seem as though that, returning to that world we used to live in may take a lot longer, and getting more comfortable living in this current one, which is a little bit more uncertain, is probably the best medicine going forward, at least in the short term. All right, folks, that's all we've got time for the story of the week. Time now for the game of the week, but first, a quick word from our sponsor, New Star. There's so much happening in marketing these days, but let's be honest, a lot of it is hype. You can join Alison Dietz and Devin de Blasio, the hosts of No Hype. It's a podcast about truth, science, and the future of marketing, as they cut through the noise and get to what you really need to know. So please share, subscribe, and enjoy the ride at nohype.newstar. That's nohype.neustar. Folks, we're back. Time now for the game of the week. The only game we play. What's the point? Part of the show where we read out 4 stories and have our contestants, Gillian, Nina, and Blake, tell us what they think is the main takeaway of the story. Okay answers get 1 point, good answers get 2, and hard to believe answers get 3 points. Each person gets 20 seconds before they hear this.
Is that a new rule? Hard to believe answers.
Hard to believe. So good, they're hard to believe.
They need to be fact-checked.
Whoever has the most points after 4 rounds wins and gets the last word. We start with who's top of the screen. Blake, can newsletters replace local newspapers? Substack, the email newsletter startup, is known for attracting high-profile writers like Casey Newton of The Verge and Charlie Warzel of The New York Times, and help them set up paid newsletters. But now, Substack wants to become known as a place where journalists you haven't heard of make a living by covering news in their hometowns, writes Peter Kafka of Recode. He notes that, quote, Substack plans to hand out a total of $1 million in the form of 1-year stipends to up to 30 journalists who are interested in covering local news on the platform. Some writers are already using Substack to sell paid subscriptions to newsletters dedicated to local news, and the company thinks with the right incentive, more people will do so, close quote. One example of that, he notes, is Matt Elliott, who covers Toronto politics via his City Hall Watcher Substack. Mr. Elliott says he has 900 subscribers paying him $5 a month, so that's $4,500 for the year. He also writes for the Toronto Star and teaches college journalism for a bit more money. So Blake, newsletters replacing local newspapers, what's the point?
So this fund is $1 million for up to 30 journalists, which at the max would lead to about $33,000 a year, which is not a lot of money, even in the media industry, unfortunately. And to get news from people you never heard of covering local news sort of defeats the whole purpose of Substack, because how am I going to build a following if nobody knows who I am?
When you put it like that.
That's the point.
Yeah, all right.
What is the point?
Jillian.
I just can't get over how salty Blake just was. I love it.
He's done
I
the
love
math.
it. So I think the point of this is that Substack is really honing in on a problem that I think that we currently have in the media, which is kind of this local news vacuum that exists. And I did think that the article very poignantly pointed out what it calls the quote unquote vicious cycle of the worsening crisis of local news for the last 20 years. And it said the internet has steadily stripped away local news outlets' advertising revenue, which leads to newsroom cutbacks, which leads to weakened products, which leads to declining audiences, which leads to more revenue losses repeat. So, can this proposal solve this? Maybe not, to Blake's point, but also why not try? Because it's a problem and we need local news. It's important.
Mm-hmm. Nina.
Yeah. So you're asking can newsletters replace the paper? I think there's the two questions are can they logistically organize this behind the scenes? And two, can they get people to read them? I mean, I think that people could read it. Honestly, Facebook is a huge source of news for people, so I don't see why newsletters couldn't be. But I think the more pressing question is who's going to make these editorial decisions about what to cover? There's all these questions about potential bias that Substack is struggling with right now. I don't think that's going to go away for this.
So a couple of numbers on papers. Just over a third of Americans read the newspaper. Just over a third. That's pretty flat now. Number two, average time spent reading newspapers by newspaper readers hasn't moved since 2017, just under half an hour. Number three, US digital, I didn't realize we broke this out. Digital newspaper ad spend share of total newspaper ad spend will cross the 50% mark this year, ticking up to 60% share in a few years' time. The total newspaper ad spending, all of it, print and digital, will continue to staircase down, falling from 4.7 billion this year to closer to 3 billion in a few years' time. Yeah, interesting to see where this goes. There was one example, Joshi Herman, former freelance writer who started The Mill in Manchester in the UK last fall, now has 850 subscribers paying him $10 a month. He just hired another reporter, rents an office, plans to eventually hire 5 to 6 reporters, freelancers to write different features. But yeah, to your guys' point, if you don't know these people, particularly Blake's point, if you don't know these people, are you going to read what they have to say? Story 2, YouTube's music streaming efforts. We start with Jillian. David Pierce of Protocol questions whether YouTube can win the music streaming wars. The short answer is probably not. Spotify, Apple and Pandora have things pretty locked up. But upon further inspection, there are 2 billion people who use YouTube. There's lots of music already there. In addition to that, YouTube has the ability to differentiate. You can listen to Mariah Carey's All I Want for Christmas Is You on all the music streaming services. But on YouTube, as Mr. Pierce points out, you can watch the original version, maybe a carpool karaoke version, a duet with Carey and Justin Bieber, the scene from Love Actually that features the song and countless live performances, covers and remixes. Want to learn to dance to the song in time for this year's holidays? You can do that. Want to learn to play the song, guitar or piano? There's that as well. All of this on the first page of YouTube search results. YouTube has a corpus of unique music content that none of its rivals can touch. So Jillian, YouTube's music streaming efforts, what's the point?
Well, the point isn't that Love Actually is my favorite movie, even though it is. I just thought I should highlight that for everybody.
Well played.
So I think the author has a solid point in that there is a vast and diverse content library on YouTube. And okay, that could be a differentiator. But I was thinking about, when do I stream music? And in most cases, that is a passive process. And it's sometimes when I'm out for a walk or when I'm on the subway. And in those cases, I want my phone in my bag, in my pocket, and I want the screen checked out. And actually, before this podcast, if you want to watch a video on YouTube, at least on my phone, I have an Android, you cannot click the off button because then it stops playing. So how can you then be a music streaming service if your user experience is designed for viewing, not just listening?
Mm-hmm. You need premium, those sneaky folks over at YouTube. Nina.
Yeah, totally agree with you. They're totally different use cases. I would go to YouTube if I want to watch someone dance to it so that I can learn it. but am I going to pay extra for that? No. What I will pay extra for is like consistent listening through that I do on Spotify. And I think honestly, yes, YouTube has a huge hold on culture right now, but I actually think Spotify does as well. I think culturally, Spotify has kind of ingrained itself within the same group of people that YouTube is really popular with. So that's like young people, like college aged even. I think that Spotify is going to give YouTube a run for their money for sure.
Blake.
Yeah, I think YouTube should be thinking more about audio in general and not just music, because that's really where Spotify has an incredible advantage. I mean, not only do they have the largest user base, but they're also making a lot of moves to get exclusive podcasts. And with music, arguably every platform has the same or very close to the same music library. But if I'm a Spotify user and I want to listen to an exclusive podcast, I'm already going to be paying for that service or a user of that service. So I don't know why I would break off and, join another music service like YouTube when I could have all my audio in one place.
We move to the next story, Mastering the Intimacy of the Inbox, which was the title of an article in Adweek, how it's worked out for Marriott. So they were writing, travel brands took a massive setback to business during COVID-19. Epsilon research from September 2020 showed that only 20% of consumers had plans to travel in the near future. Marriott's marketing team quickly pivoted to meet the new reality. Nevertheless, people's demand for brand-related content actually strengthened. There was a survey by Mito saying that 3/4 of consumers found an increase in messaging to be important during the pandemic. People wanted to know how brands were responding to COVID-19. Were health and safety measures being implemented? What were their favorite brands doing to ease the concerns of their workers? The article really stressing the importance of one-to-one communication and how email helps to facilitate that. So, Blake, mastering the intimacy of the inbox, what's the point?
Yeah, I think, that there are a lot of good points made here about what email can do, but that's really sort of the intimacy isn't really what I would say to describe it, is that with email, you can serve customers something that they're looking for directly, whether it be, a promotion, an update on a current status of an order or a certain, product release, whereas something like a social media post is not going to be as intimate, even though it might be relevant and serve its other purposes. But I think that pandemic aside, this has sort of always been the bread and butter of email marketing. So I think that it's just a constant and maybe not necessarily something that's new.
Jillian.
I mean, I totally agree. This is a continuation of email's success story. And I feel like email marketing is like the unsung hero of marketing. I think it's probably not the most intimate channel. I would argue SMS is probably a little bit more intimate because you're among the messages of friends and family, but you're really hitting your customer or your prospect where they are if you're hitting their email inbox. It's also all opt-in. So you're hitting them with consent. It's a permission-based channel, which is super important as more privacy regulation comes around, as marketers deal with like cookie deprecation. Having an email address is just like the best way to be able to have that conversation. And it's also a way to be able to be relevant, to be personalized, and to meet the customer with their needs where they are. So email doesn't get enough credit as it should. And even though it isn't the sexiest channel, it's definitely like the one that performs the best time after time after time.
Nina.
Yeah, Jillian, totally agree with you that SMS is definitely the most intimate. The other thing I will say, yeah, email marketing works, but I know that during the pandemic, email volume went way up. And I do think that SMS might be the move moving forward, because you're right that it is more intimate. And as people's inboxes get more cluttered, and honestly, like as a member of Gen Z, like I don't open my email. I think SMS might overtake it as a way to reach people.
But with SMS, do you open it because you just want it clear? You don't want it to show that you've got an opened message. That's sometimes what I'll email.
Yes.
I'll open it because I'm like,
honestly, yes,
yes.
sometimes. Yeah. I do though. Like I like having my order updates texted to me. If they go to my inbox, they get lost.
I just want two different messaging inboxes for SMS. I want one for people I care about and the other for businesses. It's fine if you text me, but it's when they live amongst those messages that Jillian was talking about that it's a pain. because now you've pushed like my mum all the way to the bottom of the list, and we can't have that, okay? Because now I'm forgetting to email her.
I was going to say, do you ever get a text message, your phone lights up and you think that, you're loved, and then you open it up and it's just like Grubhub offering you 10% off?
Been there.
Isn't that love though? Come on, let's be serious. I'm not gonna lie, I sign up for SMS and I do it to get the 10% off, and then I am like, unsubscribe. Don't bother me.
Yep. Are there any brands that we're happy to hear from?
USPS.
Yes.
Because that means that if your package has been delivered,
Okay. I just wonder whether like some brands are trying too hard. Maybe it doesn't have to be you're selling me something every time. Maybe just a little joke of the day, maybe a bit of random information, just a little, hey, how are you?
I think it depends on like if it's that's what I was talking about with relevance. Like are you telling me something I need to know because it's a product that I abandoned in the shopping cart and you're telling me it's 20% off? Or are you just like sending me the same email you sent your entire list? Because then I don't care. Leave me alone.
There we go.
Yeah, Marcus, I think what you're saying might be part of a larger problem that might just be some personal issues that need to work out.
Why? What are you talking about?
You want people to just check in on you and offer you a joke, say hi, how you doing?
Marcus, I can send you a daily Slack if you want.
Give me your number. I'll text you a joke.
I don't know, if Nike could check in on me every now and again, it would be okay. No, I'm just saying, like, I don't want to be like to have that product like rammed down my throat every time. Like sometimes it could just be something else. It could be a different type of content. Is my point. But yeah, if you want to check in on me, it's fine. Hit me up.
I don't want that texted to me. If it's not actionable, don't text me.
Yeah, that's
only
true.
Relevant
that's very true. Final story, final round. All tied up going into the final round, as it often is. We start with Gillian. Amazon opens a salon. Amazon is opening a hair salon in East London's popular marketplace, Spitalfields, staffed by hairdressers from independent London salon Neville Hair and Beauty. But this Amazon salon, as it's called, will come chocked with tech. Guests can use an augmented reality mirror to check out different colors and styles before treatments, using side-by-side comparisons to what they currently look like, what they could look like, or two different versions of what they could look like. They can scroll through magazines loaded onto tablets. Customers can scan QR codes for hair products and buy them through Amazon, and also use its new point and learn technology, where you point at a product you're interested in on a display shelf to bring up more information and purchasing options on a nearby display. Amazon staff will be the first to get to use the salon to test it out, with it opening up to the public in the coming weeks, reports the BBC. Gillian, Amazon opens a salon. What's the point?
I mean, are we surprised that there's another category and industry and brick and mortar, type of store that Amazon wants to disrupt? I mean, every time I see these headlines, I'm not surprised by it. And I think Amazon is doing what it does best here. It's taking, best in class digital touch points, best in class digital experiences, and bringing them into a brick and mortar location. I mean, that's their business model. That's what they do. It's supporting their other revenue streams by driving traffic back to, the main Amazon.com hub. One thing that is interesting, though, is that I think that for like your local hair salons that obviously have been hit hard by the pandemic, like I, for one, am actually getting a haircut later today. So, but for these businesses, they shouldn't be threatened by it. This should be an opportunity for them. Like, okay, this is what Amazon is doing. Obviously, they can't do that, but, can your customers make an appointment online? Can your customers, use a digital payment method? Do you offer contactless payments? Like there are very simple, digitally innovative things that a local hair salon can do to just up their game and start that transformation. They don't have to compete with Amazon, at least not yet.
Nina.
Yeah, I approach this from how is it going to change digital e-commerce rather than from how will it change brick and mortar commerce? I was really interested in their use of like AR technology. It's something that's been here for a while. It's been used for selling products for a while. Like Sephora has had lipstick try-ons for a long time, but I think it's been seen as this kind of like experimental new technology that you use on Snapchat or whatever to make people aware of your product. But I think if Amazon does integrate it further, like it has a shot at actually becoming mainstream.
Blake.
I think regardless of whether or not Amazon tries to take over the salon industry, that this is another sort of pilot test that Amazon is using to implement their technology and test it and improve, and then will ultimately be able to not just use this for what it is being used right now, specifically for Salon products, but a lot of these things such as ordering through QR codes and the AR stuff, these are technologies that can be used across a really, really large group of different, retail industries. So it's one of those things that, Amazon obviously likes to have a hand in every industry out there, but it's really the technology that's at play right now is the most interesting part of the story to me.
Yeah, Nina, you wrote an article about this, and I thought it was interesting. You had some data in there from eMarketer and the BizRate Insights survey. How many Americans have used or tried AR technology? 11% of Americans had used AR in February 2021. 2% said regularly. And then, you noted another 34% were at least somewhat interested in trying it out. We estimate, though, that a quarter of the US population will be using some form of AR this year. All right, that's all we've got time for the game of the week. This week's winner, drum roll, Jillian is this week's winner of the game of the week.
I would just like to say this is the first time that I've ever won game of the week. And for years, I've thought it was rigged against me. I thought Marcus was playing favorite. Or maybe I'm just rigged. Now Marcus's favorite. Maybe that happens. Maybe I just couldn't stand to see Blake win 3 weeks in a row. That's probably what it really is. Let's be frank.
You took away one of those wins for an arbitrary reason.
It was valid. I forget
what it was, but I was stripped of one of my titles.
Yeah.
Well, Marcus, you cannot take this away from me. I'm going to update my LinkedIn profile. It's official.
Wouldn't dream of it, Jillian. You get the last word. What do you want to tell us?
Ooh. Actually, I will tell our listeners,
okay.
I'm just about to start research on my US B2B advertising report that I write annually. I work really closely with the eMarketer forecasting team on this. And in order to size the market, a big part of my research is interviews. So if you're a B2B brand and you spend money on advertising, digital or traditional, email the podcast. Marcus will forward me your information, and I would love to talk to you.
Whoop. There it is. Well played, Jillian. Congratulations.
Now I want to dance.
The game of the week. It's time now for questions answered. This is the part of the show. We answer the questions you've emailed into us, and we got one this week from Abby. Abby, who's apparently our avid listener from South Korea. Hey, Abby. She enjoys listening to the show, thank goodness. She's been listening for the past year, often on her walks through the park. Thanks, Abby, for listening. So she's got a question for us. So she says, my question to you folks is, how should and will manufacturers view and invest in e-commerce? She says she's been involved in a couple of companies up until now doing e-commerce, but where e-commerce is located in terms of functions, this is not clear. I've been an e-commerce person in marketing, then again in sales, then again in marketing. I am asked by seniors in the company, where do I see myself in 10 years, sales or marketing? And also my direct reports also wonder what their paths will be. For me, it is definitely sales if you think about the results, but then it is marketing when you consider the strategies and the budgets. I wonder how it works in the States and maybe other places, or if it's not clear there either, then maybe how should we think about it? Great question. So, Jillian, you said you had some thoughts for Abby.
Yeah. So I also cover B2B e-commerce, and, especially because of COVID, we're seeing more and more manufacturers really start investing in e-commerce, making sure that they have digital sales channels to be able to, sell their goods and services to, whatever audience they need to. So it's definitely up and coming in terms of the investment part of it. I think the question of function is incredibly interesting as well. And when you think about it, it's both a marketing and a sales owned experience. You need to, make sure that you have marketing down, not just for the strategies and budgets, as this listener asked about, but to just make sure that you're driving, the audience that you're targeting, who you want to reach, to make sure that they're landing on this e-commerce site, but that it's also a sales job as well, because you need to make sure that the experience, is fluid, that people are able to check out the way that they need to check out. And especially for a B2B manufacturer where you're selling into like a distributor or another business, it's so complex for e-commerce. You have to make sure that you're, creating accounts that are not just for an individual buyer, but for, a corporation. So I think both sides of the fence are probably reasonable and valid experiences for her to have.
Terrific. Thank you so much, Gillian. There you go, Abby. That's our answer for you. Abby also thinks that Benjamin from California is a real person. Give him and his poor wife some credit. For folks who have no idea what that means, there's a conspiracy. We think that Ben from California, who emails into the show, may or may not be Mark, who is the Weekly Listener Hall of Famer, and it's his alias, his pseudonym. We're not sure. He's definitely a real person, but the plot thickens. But Abby thinks that he's real. Thank you so much, Abby, for the question. Questions of your own, podcast at emarketer.com. Send those in. It's a shame because I had a joke. For you, but the people will have to wait. All right, folks, time now for dinner party data. This is the part of the show where we tell you the most interesting thing that we have learned this week. We start with Gillian because she won the game of the week by a lot of points. Gillian, what you got?
Yeah, so this date is actually something that one of my really good contacts, Todd Lebo, who runs Ascend2, they're a source that I use in basically every piece of content that I write. He hit me up on LinkedIn last week and sent me some new research that he did with Orbit Media, all about how B2B marketers view their website versus how visitors view their website. And it's actually some really comical data, because when you ask B2B marketers about the website features that they thought were most important, and then you ask the B2B website visitors the same question, there's a lot of gaps there. So the funniest one that I thought was just like typical marketers, 80% of marketers said that calls to action were an important website feature. Okay. Only 28% of visitors thought so. But then the simplest feature on a website, which is your search box, okay? So 69% of visitors was like, yeah, search boxes are important. Only 26% of marketers thought that the search box was important.
Oh dear.
So I just think this is really comical and shows how marketers are like just trying too hard sometimes. They're so in their head, making sure that there's a proper call to action and so buttoned up. And like sometimes they're not thinking about the most basic customer expectations, like the ability to search and find something.
That's a really good one. I like that. There is some research where it asks people, what do you think is the most important thing to you? And then it asks them, what do you think is the most important thing to society? And for society, they think it's celebrity. And for them, celebrity is literally the last thing that's important to them. And it's so interesting, the kind of paradox, or basically the difference between what people is important to people and what they think is important to others. That's fascinating. Let's go with Nina. What you got for us, Nina? You better not be pulling up something last minute like the other week. She texted her friends for some dinner party data. It's a shambles.
And it was great data.
It was good. It was pretty good. I was impressed. I was actually quite jealous.
I mean, I just heard about the abysmal Oscars ratings today. So they originally said 9.85 million viewers. They just like recalculated, I guess, added a few. Now it's 10.4, which makes it sound a little less terrible than like single digits millions.
Suspect.
Little sketch.
But this is like, yeah, right. I mean, last year was like 23. So like, regardless, it's still, they're down bad.
Wow. Did anyone watch?
Pretty bad.
No one watched? No. Has anyone seen Nomadland? I did watch it. Wasn't bad.
Didn't watch any of the movies.
Really good. Anything Francis
The
McDormand.
best picture wasn't bad. Is that the new bar? The best
I'm
picture wasn't
I'm English.
bad.
That's where I live. Wasn't bad. That means amazing in this country. Blake, that's very good. Thanks, Nina. Blake, what you got for us?
So there's been a lot of stuff in the news lately about different brands selling used or slightly worn or refurbished products. So Nike launched a refurbishment program, and I believe it was this week or last week that Lululemon also announced that they were going to have their own secondhand market for their clothing. And there was some data from Civic Science that they surveyed U.S. consumers in mid-April, and they found that 81% said that they were not likely at all to buy a pair of gently worn, like new, or imperfect shoes from Nike's new refurbishment program. So I think, right off the bat, even though it sort of seems like, especially in sneaker culture, there's a huge resale market. And I was sort of surprised to see so many people aren't interested even for when a brand like Nike is mentioned. So it leads me to believe that maybe consumers are not as interested in purchasing these types of secondhand or gently used clothing as brands might be anticipating.
Blake, did you leave the company and get another job working for Civic Science?
Wait, have you figured out my rotation of dinner party dating?
He's absolutely working for Civic Science. Has anyone checked? Has HR checked this to see if Blake's still employed with us?
I mean, we do have a good relationship with Civic Science.
They're so good.
We've been able to ask some proprietary questions before. But no, I like Global Web Index, Civic Science, and Morning Consult are always... They just always have like the stuff that's like tangential to marketing and like e-commerce, but like they also have great questions about like how many Americans, what type of milk or eat bacon, and it's just interesting.
What's the American royal family? Was that Civic
Science? Oh yeah, the
I
American royal
love Civic
family.
Science.
Yeah, so good, so good. Well played.
Their founder sends a really good email out every Saturday that I read over the weekend.
Oh.
I don't know if you subscribe to that one, Blake, but
that may or may not be written by Blake.
I mean, I think it's ghostwritten by Blake. Let's be serious. It's all part of the creator economy.
Right, exactly.
Very good. All right, folks, I've got two quick ones for you. Why the Leaning Tower of Pisa is leaning. The reason the Leaning Tower of Pisa is tilted, is the same reason that it's still standing. If you've ever wondered why it's leaning, it's due to the soft soil beneath the building's surface. And while that might have frustrated the people who constructed the landmark, I think they figured this out like 8 stories into building it. It started to tilt, and they apparently powered through. I would have probably been like, we should stop this project. Something's wrong. But they powered through, and the engineers figured out that the soft soil is partly what protects the building from earthquakes. The tower's height and stiffness, as well as the softness of the soil at the building's foundation, causes the vibrational characteristics of the structure to be modified substantially in such a way that the tower does not resonate with earthquake ground motion, according to phys.org. Interestingly, as well, the BBC reported a few years ago that the Leaning Tower of Pisa was apparently straightening slightly. It has been for the last 2 decades. Even if it maintained that current rate, though, there was a professor and consultant to the building's restoration group was saying that even if it continued to correct itself, which it is, told the New York Times it would take 400 years for it to fully straighten. So don't worry, it will still be there.
Well, then there's plenty of time for everyone who hasn't gone to take their picture with the Leaning Tower of Pisa to go get it.
It's pretty cool. Although
I have that picture.
Yes, but the building next to it, Gillian, I thought was nicer. It's this huge cathedral-looking, but to the left.
Yes, the church.
Yeah, it is nicer.
It's gorgeous. And I got there, I was just staring at that. And everyone
but it's
was
not leaning. It's not leaning, Marcus.
So who cares? Exactly. It's a shame. Second thing I got for you, the first movie ever to release a soundtrack was Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. There are plenty of classical film soundtracks the movie lovers and music lovers enjoy listening to over and over again. But the first film to ever commercially release a soundtrack was Disney's Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. That movie came out in 1937. Yup, 84 years ago. The soundtrack was released in January 1938, including such classics as Whistle While You Work and Hi-Ho. Snow White was Walt Disney Animation Studios' first fully animated feature. Top 3 Disney films, Robin Hood, Lion King, Aladdin. Case closed. That's all we got time for this. Before anyone argues with me, that's the list. That's all we got time for this week's episode. Thank you so much to my guests. Thank you to Gillian. She won this week's Game of the Week.
I can't believe you named Robin Hood as number 1. I'm not
Robin
saying
Hood,
it's bad,
absolutely.
but it's just a
so
very odd choice.
What's your first choice? What you got? Go.
Favorite Disney movie?
Lion King. Lion King.
This is so much pressure. I don't know if I can pick. It's probably Aladdin.
Yeah. That was my number 3. That was what was that? Number 3?
Little Mermaid's also pretty good.
She's got to be up there. Yeah. All right.
Some of them are really bad on rewatch.
That's true. Blake, what you got? What's your favorite?
I don't care for Disney movies.
Oh my god. This is why I probably stripped him of the belt last time. Probably this comment. Blake, congratulations. Oh, sorry, not congratulations. Thank you for joining.
You're welcome.
Do not congratulate him. It's my turn in the spotlight.
Disappointed about that. Nina, thank you so much for joining.
Yeah, thank you. Also, it's Moana, clearly.
Oh, Moana. Clearly.
Oh my God.
So good.
And Frozen. I mean, I think it depends on what part of your life you're in.
There's a lot
what
to choose
Disney
from.
movie is best.
Yeah. Thank you, listeners, for listening in. If you have thoughts on the Disney films, want to ask us a proper question, say hi, whatever you want to do. Podcast@emarketer.com. Get in touch. We'll see you guys on Monday for the Behind the Numbers Daily, an eMarketer podcast made possible by New Star. Have great weekends. Watch Robin Hood. Crying out loud. So good. It's easily the best. Come on, though. Let's be real.
I do. When he sucks on his thumb and goes, Mommy. It's
so
great. It's classic.
good.
I didn't even know that there was a Robin Hood.
Oh.
I know Robin Hood Men in Tights, the Mel Brooks movie.
That's good.
That's
73.
My favorite Robin Hood is with Kevin Costner, though. I'm sorry.
Yes, please. Morgan.
Classic.
Morgan Freeman. So good.